So today we're going to be talking about the Russian-Ukrainian war that has just escalated recently, and is this going to lead to World War III? That title has been in the headlines of many news articles lately, and it's been talked about a whole lot on the international stage. Now, is the current Ukrainian-Russian conflict going to lead to World War III? In my opinion, I don't think so. But if you want me to go into a little bit more depth and analysis, and we're going to look at some news articles and see exactly what's happening and break it down, then stick around. We'll also look at the possible scenarios for World War III, should this war lead into that. And yeah, so if you guys do enjoy today's video, make sure to leave a like on it and subscribe to the channel. If you're new, all the support is greatly appreciated. I am now finally back home from college, and you guys will not be seeing any recorded videos there until like maybe March. So every video from here on out is no longer pre-recorded. I have no more pre-recorded videos. All of these civilization videos will now be up to date. Anyway, let's go ahead and jump straight into it. So Russia and Ukraine have been at war since the beginning of 2022. That's almost 3 years now, which is insane. But just recently, the US greenlit Ukraine to use their missiles and British missiles against Russia, launching them into Russian territory. And Russia said that this is basically an act of war and that Russia is at war with the United States/NATO. Now, of course, they aren't actually at war. Putin tends to kind of bluff this kind of stuff. So let's go ahead and take a look at a few articles and kind of catch up with what has been happening lately. All right, so we will be using AP News for this video in case you need the source. But basically, the most recent event that took place was Russia firing hypersonic missiles into Ukraine. And Ukraine has, recovered that wreckage. As you can see, we'll look at this article first. Here's a picture of some of the wreckage. So I just realized you couldn't see me, my bad. So yeah, I have two monitors again. This is good. I would have went the whole video without knowing that you guys couldn't see me. Also, I should probably invest in an ad blocker, right? All right, but as this article here by Samya Kulab says, I hope I said their name right. It began with US President Joe Biden reversing a long-standing policy by granting Kyiv permission to deploy American longer-range missiles inside Russian territory, and ended with Moscow striking Ukraine with a new experimental ballistic missile that has alarmed the international community and heightened fears of further escalation. So, for the timeline, you have last Sunday, which was November 17th, the US approved strikes using longer-range American weapons. The Army Tactical Missile System, or the AdizzPro. I don't know weapon terminology actually. But the response for this, and the reason the US did this, is because North Korea currently has troops in Ukraine. So North Korea is at war with Ukraine, sort of. I mean, okay, in technical international law, there isn't a war at all. Russia just moved troops into Ukraine and they're fighting. So technically there is no official declaration of war by any parties. But if you were to take a look at the Ukraine war, you have North Korea sending its troops to help Russia fight Ukraine. So North Korea is technically in war with Ukraine, at war with Ukraine, or aiding with the invasion of Ukraine. Therefore, they're at war with Ukraine, which nobody, I think, would have foresaw something like that at the beginning of the war. Like, maybe we would have seen Belarus join. Surprisingly, they still haven't. But we have Russia and North Korea invading Ukraine. Weird. But on Tuesday, Ukraine fired those missiles that America gave them into Ukraine, and Russia's response to this was threatening nuclear war. Typical Russian things to do. But that response, it says here that on Tuesday, Russian President Vladimir Putin formally lowered the threshold for using nuclear weapons, opening the door to a potential nuclear response by Moscow to even a conventional attack by a nation supported by a nuclear power that could include Ukrainian attacks backed by the United States. Okay, so this is basically Russia saying, hey, we're big strong. You keep doing that, we're going to blow you to smithereens with nuclear bombs. And there's a ton of treaties in the world, a ton of conventions, a ton of conferences that say, hey, don't use nuclear bombs. We saw what they did to Japan in World War II, horrible things. And now those bombs are 100 times stronger, and you want to use them against Ukraine, which don't. Wednesday, US approves giving Ukraine anti-personnel mines. Now, something about anti-personnel mines. I actually learned this in college. They're banned by most of the world. There's a whole, I think it's the Ottawa Convention that banned anti-personnel mines, but the US and a few others did not sign said thing, so the US can do this. They're not a part of the Ottawa Conference. So in the second major shift in US policy, the Biden administration announced it will give Ukraine anti-personnel mines to help slow Russia's battlefield advances. So this was after they gave them the bombs or missiles to Ukraine that they used against Russia, and after Russia made its nuclear threats. So in response to this, also Raiders and Chiefs, guys, yeah, advertisements. Why is there two? No. On Thursday, Russia used its experimental ballistic missile for the first time. This was Thursday, the 21st of November, almost a week ago when I'm releasing this video. So this is Russia's like official, like actual on paper response. Of course, the nuclear threat isn't an actual like, it's not something they did, it's something they said, but this is something that they are doing in response. So something you need to know about the international system, if you don't know already, is that everything that one enemy does, the other enemy will respond to it. It's called realism. It's an international political theory. Most of the world subscribes to the theory of realism. They do what's best for the state, and they don't give a crap about anything else. That's kind of what it is. Not a whole lot of like negotiating and democracy kind of talks. That's more of the liberalism theory. Here I am, just giving you free college knowledge. You can also just look it up. But yeah, realism. Your enemy does something and you respond to it by doing something. It's basically just, you know, they're flexing at each other. Big, muscular dudes flexing at each other. That's what Russia and the United States do all the time. So while Russia did use their missiles against Ukraine, it was more so of kind of showing off toward the United States than having a practical use, because I mean, like, Russia could wipe Ukraine off the map with their nukes if they really wanted to, but they don't want to do that because that's a bad idea. And just to kind of like back up the stance that I have, that is like Russia's not actually going to do anything here, you can see here that Moscow gave Washington a 30-minute warning of the attack. So, you know, they're saying like, hey, we're going to go launch these missiles into Ukraine, just so you know. Like, if they really didn't care and were actually like going full on rogue nuclear threats were actually going to happen, then they would not tell the United States, but they told the United States. And then we get to Friday, November the 22nd. NATO calls emergency meeting as Ukraine's parliament closes. Now, a few embassies in Ukraine have actually closed. The United States embassy closed, and I think a few other European nations closed their embassies, which means they are out, not safe to be there, and that's probably due to the nuclear threats, just in case Russia actually does go through with it. It's a precautionary thing, but this NATO meeting, let's talk about that. So they were held at the request of Ukraine, and Ukraine's partners weighed in on the dangerous new phase of the conflict. Poland's Prime Minister Donald Tusk said the conflict is entering a decisive phase and taking on very dramatic dimensions, which is true. Hypersonic missiles, fun. If that's what they actually are, we're not too sure yet, I think, but Russia claims that it is. Russia also claims that these are missiles that the US can do nothing about, or US and Western allies have nothing they can do about. There's no countermeasure to hypersonic missiles, so that's kind of Russia's stance on it. They're saying, hey, we got these missiles, you can't do anything about them, so stop aiding Ukraine or we're going to use them against you. The truth of it is that the US more than likely has something to stop those missiles, because the United States has a very large defensive budget and we don't know where all that money is going. And I guarantee you a majority of it that we don't know where it's going is going into secret weapon programs and stuff like that. Anyway, Saturday, Zelensky says he believes war could be ended next year. Possible, you know, war could end at any time. Do I think it's going to end by next year? I don't think so. And if it does, then Ukraine's going to be very unhappy about it. So kind of tying back to the US elections real quick, Donald Trump said he would end the conflict in Ukraine. And I think the only realistic way that you could end the conflict as of next year is if you just give Russia what they want in the Donbass and the Crimea regions, which would, of course, make Ukrainians not so happy giving up their own land. So I think what we're going to see here is an attempt at that, in Ukraine saying, no, we're not going to give up our land in the continuation of the war. Or on the other side of things, we could see the United States and its allies, or more so just the United States, threatening to cut aid to Ukraine and forcing them to sign a treaty with Russia, which gives up the Donbass region and Crimea. That's the most likely thing that I think will happen if this war is decided by next year. I don't think there's a scenario present where the war can be over and Ukraine keeps all of its claims. So that was everything that I want to talk about on that website, the AP News website. Their covering of the Ukraine war has been very good. We can also take a look at the current interactive map of the Ukraine war. Not a whole bunch of advances have been made in recent times. So it looks like, yeah, the Ukraine does still have their little invasion into Russia. They captured the Russian town right here, or maybe village. Of course, here we have the Donetsk and Luhansk regions of Ukraine. We have the big city of Mariupol, Kharkiv, which is probably being bombed every day. Looks like oh no, Russia still has a little bit of something happening over here. So this actually might be new. I'm just trying to remember back to like when I last looked at this map in a video. Yeah, Ukraine is actually doing not just one big offensive, they actually have multiple. They have one right here as well, and then another small one over here. This really isn't anything too major though, but I would imagine that, Ukraine taking land from Russia is just trying to maybe change the narrative. Like overall, their best strategy would be just to defend themselves. And I'm honestly not too sure why they haven't pushed back more. Well, I could tell you why. It's because they don't have enough resources or troops, or they don't have the logistics to do so. But I find it interesting that they're pushing into Russia as opposed to pushing into their own territory. But as of now, there's like 2 active battlegrounds. We have over here in this region near the Donbass province, and once again up north in the Donbass province on this front line right here. So Russia has really just stopped any kind of advances they had out of Crimea, and they've kind of just let themselves to the more Russian-speaking areas of Ukraine, which I believe was one of their goals, was just to take the Russian areas of Ukraine. Still, that's an active war impeding on Ukraine's sovereignty. And then, of course, there are the claims that, Ukraine was doing bad things over here in the West to the Russian population. That's up for debate. You can do the research yourselves. I'm not going to do the research for you because this video isn't about that. It's about the grand scheme of things. So, can this lead to World War III? Will this lead to World War III? Like I said in the beginning of the video, I do not think that it will. And I think that what we're most likely going to see here is a treaty being formed in the near future. And I'll tell you right now, Ukraine is not going to be happy with it unless they want to give up the land, in which case I don't know why it hasn't been done already. If they're willing to give up the land, then I don't know why there hasn't been a peace treaty. I can't tell you. But, the whole reason the war is still going on is because Ukraine doesn't want to give up Donbass and Crimea. But if, let's say, for example, Donald Trump gets into office, he forces Ukraine to give up land in order to stop the war overall. This is the new map of Europe. Donbass and Crimea are officially going to be recognized as Russian territories as per the Treaty of Kiev. Sure, we'll call it that. I don't know if it's actually going to be called that. Nobody knows, because there is no plan for peace negotiations. There's no conferences being held about peace negotiations just yet. I mean, of course, there are conferences to try to get to peace negotiations, but they have all failed. So this is our most likely scenario right now. Maybe not in the near future, maybe like not next year, or maybe next year, but I think no matter what, or how this conflict ends, I don't think there's going to be any nuclear bombs. Russia might roll out more troops, they might roll out more pressure on Kyiv, they might ramp up their bombardments of the country, but I don't think they take more than what I have given them here. I think Donbass and Crimea are their number one strategy. And, maybe if they have to invade into Ukraine more, like maybe they start another huge offensive into Ukraine. I don't think that's likely because I don't think they can. But it is not unlikely that we would see Russia take a little bit more than what they, originally were going for. And, the whole region they have captured right now here in the south, they could take that as well. I don't think they will, and I don't think they can. But this right here is like the absolute worst case scenario for Ukraine, other than being fully annexed, but that's not going to happen. If things go really bad, this is what Ukraine is left with. And like I said, I don't think Russia will take this southern area here. And I think this is the most likely map of Europe that we'll see in the near future, whether it be because the United States forces Ukraine to exit the war, or because the war finally stalls out and they sign either a stalemate or a peace treaty. Say that it did go into World War III, I don't know how it could do that other than maybe Ukraine getting nuked. Like if Russia actually nuked Ukraine, I think there is a warranted response by NATO there. But the issue with that is that Ukraine is not a member of NATO. It's not a member of the EU either. It's solely on its own. They don't have any defensive pacts with the United States or any NATO allies. So it's not like they could legally, and they can't justify NATO going to war with Russia over nuking Ukraine. I don't think, unless they want to use radiation spill as an excuse. So say the wind blows radiation into Poland, it kills some people, and there you go. There's your justification. You can then go to war with Russia, as NATO would, or they would have to because of Article 5. I, once again, don't think that's going to happen because I don't think Russia's going to nuke Ukraine in the first place. And the only other scenario from which World War III could break out of, foreseeably, is if Russia were just to straight up attack NATO. Like if they were to send missiles into the Baltics, into Finland, or Poland, Romania. I think their most likely targets would be the Baltics because Russia has expressed interest in annexing said region. I don't think they would attack Finland because Finland has hands and they don't want to fight Finland again. Poland makes sense as well because of the Kaliningrad, and also Russia and Poland are quite chirpy on the international stage. But yeah, if Russia doesn't nuke Ukraine or attack the Baltics or Poland, then World War III isn't going to happen. And I think there is a whole lot of fear mongering happening with this, like the media and just like big public figures and stuff like that. I think people are like kind of preaching World War III, like hey, saying like, hey, it's about to go down, which really it's not. I've been wrong before though. Who knows? Nobody knows. Well, Russia knows, because this is largely dependent on how Russia reacts and what they do. Like if they don't do anything, then World War III is not going to happen. But if they start obviously, you know, nuking or blowing bases up, then yeah, World War III is going to happen. NATO bases, not Ukrainian bases. It doesn't matter what they do to Ukraine, as long as it's within international law and justified, but nobody follows international law in the first place, so even if they do something bad, like, you know, biological or chemical warfare, there's still probably not going to be a response. So yeah, that's my 2 cents analysis and prediction / breakdown / whatever you want to call it of the current situation. It has escalated. Obviously, Russia using supposed hypersonic missiles in Ukraine is a pretty big deal. Once again, that kind of goes back to them just kind of flexing their muscles towards the West, saying, hey, look what I can do. Is World War III going to come from this? In my opinion, no. I would say that there is a 95% chance that World War III does not happen, which still leaves a 5% chance, but those numbers are very thin. I think most people have like the mentality and think that Russia is crazy enough to actually start a nuclear war. I don't think there's a single human being on this earth that is actively wanting to start a nuclear war, which would subsequently wipe out the human race and kill everybody. I don't think there's anybody that really wants that, and I don't think there's anyone willing to go to the measures to start that. If there is, though, it could be Vladimir Putin, either him or Kim Jong-un, the 2 leaders of the 2 countries that are at war with Ukraine. So that's kind of why it's been spotlighted a little bit more. Like, you know, we have these 2 craziest people in the world, and they're both threatening a nuclear war, and they're also both attacking a country. So I think that's where the narrative has started and kind of brewed that World War III is close to happening, because it's just the circumstances and the players in this conflict, they fit the memo. But yeah, once again, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. And of course, thank you to all the superfans. This includes Terminator, Exalens, Georgie Badev, Deathlord 182, ABXI, Pablo Sigma Cat, Death Strider X, Hammertoad 45, CTG on YT, Poland Country Ball, Nevada Garbage Trucks, and DW Cool Dude. Once again, thank you guys.